4-speed JK with a L96 6-liter and a 6L80. We talk a lot about engines. Let's talk a little bit about transmissions today. If we go way back in GM's history, and there were transmissions before this, but the Power Glide, or Power Slide as we used to call it, was really the first mainstream GM hydromatic transmission that was put in a lot of vehicles. And it wasn't a bad transmission for its day. I mean, if you consider you were going from a manual transmission, 3 on the tree, or if you were lucky, 3 on the floor or 4 on the floor, the hydromatic made sense, especially for people that really didn't care about shifting or weren't in tune to automobiles. The automatic, you just pushed a button or put it in gear and went. The Turbo 350 came out, which was a very popular transmission, 3-speed automatic. It was dominant in the 1970s and even in the 1980s. I believe they added the torque converter clutch, the lockup torque converter clutch in the Turbo 350s at the very end. I could be wrong there, but shortly after the Turbo 350, they realized they need more diverse gearing. And diverse gearing is really where it's at, and the more gears you have in between obviously helps. So the early transmissions really weren't that efficient, and it was universally known they got less gas mileage. The manufacturers rated them at less gas mileage, but it was worth it for the convenience for a lot of people to have the automatic. Most of the early transmissions had a 1-to-1 top gear, and it wasn't even 1-to-1 when you factored in the torque converter slippage. Some of the later 3 speeds and then 4 speeds went to the lockup torque converter, and that's all they did is they locked up. They weren't pulse width modulated, so you can control converter slippage. They were basically locked up or not. And that did help a little bit on the highway. So let's back up a minute. What does a torque converter do? Well, a torque converter basically attaches the engine to the transmission, and it has to slip because when you come to a stop, the engine continues to run, but you don't want the vehicle to move. So it's a fluid coupling, essentially. It has rotors and vanes in there. I don't exactly understand the operation of it, but the later converters with the dual clutches and the pulse width modulated torque converter clutch are an important part of what makes the modern transmission work so well. So this torque converter slippage can be a good thing and a bad thing. 1, it builds heat. 2, when you don't want it to slip, like on the highway, it could be a bad thing, but it can be a good thing because there's something called torque multiplication. Torque multiplication is similar to slipping the clutch in a manual transmission. So when you launch off the line, you're not a direct drive to the rear axle. That torque converter clutch is slipping, and then you're going through the transmission, and obviously the transmission gearing in first gear is lower than 1-to-1. So what this does is it gives you a lot of torque, and it gives you a lot of pulling power off the line, probably more so than a manual transmission. Now, somebody who can drive a manual transmission can get close to the operation of an automatic, but some of these modern launch control transmissions are just beyond what a human can do. You basically rev it up and then the transmission does the rest. But let's not get too much into the technology. Let's talk about the transmissions that you have a choice of. As most of you know, the original JKs had a 4-speed transmission, and it was pretty miserable. The original 4-speed JK transmission was a remnant of the 1980s. High friction, high heat, didn't have the best gearing or the most diverse gearing, and it sucked the life out of the 3.8 engine. And it really is one of the things that gave the 3.8 a bad rep. I think if the 3.8 had a high gear transmission, at least a 5-speed, maybe a 7, 8, 9 speed, I think it would have performed a lot better. In fact, you can see that the Pentastar with the 5-speed works better, and then the 8-speed works much better than that. So after the Turbo 350, they added an overdrive, and they called it the Turbo 700. We did a lot of conversions with the Turbo 700. They were basically a hydraulic valve body controlled transmission. There wasn't a lot of electronics in it. Now, they did control the torque converter clutch electronically. We used to just take the solenoid and hook it up to a switch so you could turn it on and off at will. However, from the manufacturer, it had a simple circuit that would engage the torque converter clutch based on RPM and engine load and simple things like that. But that transmission quickly evolved into the 4L60 or 4L65, 4L70. They're all of the same family. And you'll notice that there's an E after it, a 4L60E, for example, and that means it's electronically controlled. Now, these transmissions really did step up the electronics, and while there was still a lot of hydraulics going on, you could do a lot more tuning with electronics than you could with the earlier hydraulic control transmissions. I remember in the earlier transmissions, there was little weights that would spin around, and you could buy shift kits and other things to make it shift the way you wanted. But it was pretty much a mechanical effort to get the transmission to shift the way you wanted. The newer transmissions started to turn that into software. Now the 4L65 carried over into the Gen 4 engines after the Gen 3s. Now the 4-speed automatics like the 4L60, 4L65 carried over into the Gen 4 engines after the Gen 3 engines. And they didn't use them for very long. It was quickly supplanted by the 6-speed or the 6L80 by about 2009. But the 4L60, being an earlier design transmission, required an external TCM. Meaning if you look at the Gen 3 controller, the LS1B for example, it was a PCM. It had the engine and transmission controls inside of it. So you had a bunch of wires going between the PCM and the transmission, and GM actually had some issues with all those wires going down the tunnel. They would chafe, they would get soaked in oil or whatever, being external from the valve body. So when they took the 4-speed and they incorporated it into the Gen 4 engines, they had to run a separate transmission controller because the Gen 4s and the Gen 5s have independent ECMs and TCMs. And it happened to be the T42 controller for the 4-speed. A lot more wires involved. A lot of guys say, hey, why can't I run a 4-speed in my JK? Well, we don't support the 4-speed. We did a couple of really early builds back when we started to do swaps, but it's a much more complicated swap. You got this external TCM with a lot more wires going to the transmission. So what the 6L80 did that I like, and later on they reversed this, but they put the TCM right inside of the valve body. And by doing this, they eliminated a lot of the wiring. Now, with the TCM inside of the valve body, we basically just have power grounds, a brake signal, a redundant brake signal for the transmission, and some CAN wires. And you don't have all those wires for the internal mode switch, or the park neutral switch, or the solenoids all going back to a TCM. So this really cleaned things up, and the 6L80 also diversified the gearing. Now that you got 6 forward gears instead of 4, we went to a 4-to-1 low first gear. And that's tremendous because you guys with 40s or larger tires, that means you can launch your JK out of the hole a lot better than the earlier 3 and 4-speed transmissions. But as a bonus, you also had a higher overdrive. We went from about a 0.8 overdrive to about a 0.66 or 0.67 overdrive. So now you're turning lower RPM and you have better launch capability. The 6L80 became an excellent transmission in my opinion. They did have some issues with it in 7 and 8. By 9, they pretty much had it sorted, and from 10 and up, the only time we ever see problems with 6L80s is when they're overheated or abused. And guys, keep this in mind. Probably the thing that will most damage your transmission is heat. If you've got big tires, monitor your transmission temperatures. When you're climbing in the rocks in a hot day, that transmission temperature can climb rapidly, especially if you're running in sand. If you're running in sand dunes with big tires, that puts a tremendous load in the transmission, and if you overheat the transmission, bad things can happen. So if you are going to run the transmission in an environment like that, just get additional coolers, as much cooling as you need. But the most important thing is to monitor the transmission temperature. Now in my experience, if the transmission temperature stays cool, and that would be below, let's say, 200 degrees, that trans temp life is a long time. And as long as it stays pink, you can pretty much keep running it. Now if you get it hot, 250, 270, 300 degrees, depending on how hot you get it, you're going to greatly shorten that transmission life. If you hit 300 degrees, the transmission fluid temp is probably toast, and you probably should just replace it at that point. So the 6L80 was the mainstay of the Gen 4 engine, and we've done hundreds of them, and I think it's an excellent transmission. The thing about the 6L80 is it shifts pretty much like a traditional 4-speed or 3-speed. If you're used to a hot rod from the 60s or 70s, then the 6L80 is not going to surprise you. It pretty much shifts the same. It just has more gears. I know it is a Suedo dual clutch transmission, but as far as the drivability goes, that's what it is. One of the great things about the 6L80 is just how tunable it is. Like I mentioned, the earlier transmissions required hard parts to get it the way you want it to shift, but with the 6L80 you can do almost anything right through the software. Now you have to know what you're doing because with torque management and all the other stuff going on, tuning these later model transmissions gets much more complex. When the Gen 5 motors came out in about 2014, GM introduced the 8L90. The 8L90 had a rough start, but what the 8L90 had was strength. The 8L90 was a very strong transmission, capable of almost 800 foot-pounds of torque. The issues they had were mostly software. The shifting wasn't optimal, and I think we can say that about most of the other manufacturers. I drove some of the early Dodges and my Mercedes, and other manufacturers, once they moved into the high gear transmissions, had similar issues. The 8L90 by about 2017 was sorted. So if you got an 8L90 after 2016, they were pretty much trouble-free. Yes, they did require more tuning and more learning and adaptives, but you have a really strong transmission. So if you have 40s, 42s, you have a supercharged engine, the 8L90 makes an excellent candidate. Now the 8L90 did move the TCM out of the valve body and back onto the fender, and I'm not exactly sure why GM did that, but I can guess, and that is serviceability. If you ever had to service the TCM in a 6L80, you had to pull the valve body out, or part of the valve body out, and it was really a pain. It was very costly. You had to drain the fluid. It's much easier to just replace a small module. So I guess they made that choice, and probably figured that the amount of computing power in the modern TCM was better suited to an external module. In any event, the 8L90 and the 10L80 run an external TCM. It was the T87, then the T87A, and now it's the T93, I believe, in the 20 and ups. And I'm not going to get into that because, just like the earlier LSs, you got to make sure that your TCM matches the engine that you have. So the 8L90 did essentially what the 6L80 did to the 4-speed. It just added a couple of more gears. The gear spacing is a little bit more diverse. You have a little bit lower of a first gear, a little bit higher of a high gear. And you really notice that when you go to the smaller displacement engines like the 5.3. The 5.3 LT with an 8 or a 10-speed performs like a 6-liter or a 6.2-liter of the last generation engine. And what you will find is engines like diesels or small displacement engines like these high gear transmissions, so they can operate in their narrower power bands. That's why the Pentastar reacted so well to the 8-speed. Now, if you go from a 6-speed to an 8-speed on a V8, you're going to notice a difference, but not as much of a difference as if you do that in a 3.6-liter engine. What I find is GM and the automotive industry started to change. Manufacturers started to cooperate with each other to reduce overhead and costs. So GM, Ford, Honda, Toyota got together and wanted to develop the ultimate transmission, and they decided 10 gears is what they wanted. Now with 10 gears, you can pretty much support any engine, whether it's a V8, a 4-cylinder, a diesel, a 6-cylinder, and you're going to have the gear diversity you need. So they got together and they developed this transmission. Ford's got it, GM's got it, others got it. Now they're not all the same transmission. They make different versions of it, of course, smaller ones and bigger ones. And the 10L80 turned out to be the transmission that most of the GM half-ton trucks ran, and it's an excellent transmission. Now I have guys that would rather run the 8-speed, not only because it's stronger, but because they like less gears. They don't want to have it shift as much. I notice if the 10-speed is geared properly, tuned properly, you really don't notice the shifts, so it's kind of a moot point. But if you're one of these guys that's really sensitive to shifting and you want the minimal amount of shifting, then the 8-speed probably would be better. Now the 10L80 is not as strong as the 8L90, but it's plenty strong. It's still good for over 500 foot-pounds of torque. Now I will say that the 8 and the 10-speed do shift differently than the earlier 6 speeds, 4 speeds, 3 speeds. If you're used to a turbo 350 type of shift, you're going to find that the 10-speed and the 8-speed aren't like that. It's not the traditional shift pattern. These things basically shift so smooth that you don't notice the shift in most cases. So you're kind of going along like a mini bike. I don't know if you remember the old mini bikes with the centrifugal clutches, that the faster you went, the higher the gear ratio would get. It's kind of like that. Now, if you don't set them up right, you feel the shift, and sometimes you can feel the shift really hard if you got really short gears. And that's another thing that I should probably mention is, if you're running really short gears, you got 513s with 35s, you're never going to get what you want as far as economy out of the engine. Yeah, you're going to have a go-kart that's going to fly, but these engines need to be loaded down. These engines like to run under 2,000 RPM on the highway. If you start spinning them up at 2,800 RPM like the V6 on the highway, you're probably going to get less mileage than the V6 because you get a larger displacement engine. Once you get used to the 8-speed and the 10-speed, I think you'll agree that it's superior to pretty much everything else that's out there. And I think you'll notice that this 6L80 has no problem getting up this hill, but there's quite a bit of time in each gear where the engine is pulling, and that means that we are pulling over a larger RPM range. If we had an 8 or a 10 speed, we probably would have shifted 2 or 3 more times than we just did there. The shifts are not very perceptible, so from a driver's standpoint, it's not that much different. But instead of pulling 2,000 RPM in each gear, we might have pulled 1,500 RPM in each gear. We're out here again in Utah with an early JK and a 6-liter. This is actually the third one I think I've driven to Utah with a 6-liter, and they've all had short gears. If you can see here, we're going about 80. The speedometer's off a little, and we're about 2,600 RPM, which is too many RPM. These short gears take some of the mileage out of it, and it's very pleasant to drive, don't get me wrong. We got just over 290 miles on the last tank, so, well, probably more like 280, and that is just when the light came on, the low fuel light. My guess would be we would have easily got over 300 if it was geared for this engine. Now, don't blame the owners, because when they had V6s in these, especially the 3.8s, they're miserable on these trips. I mean, I'm sailing along here at 80 miles an hour like nothing, but a 3.8, I actually took my 3.8 up this road when it was new. It was a 2009 Rubicon. I could not hold 80 miles an hour. Some of the grades I had to slow down to 70, 75, and the motor was just screaming. And as you can see, traffic here, these guys are going 90, and I couldn't keep up. Hello, officer. Utah Highway Patrol is actually pretty cool. I've never had an issue with them. I did get pulled over once, but not for going too fast, for going too slow. I was in my JK near Park City, and it was hunting. It was downshifting, upshifting, trying to hold 75 miles an hour in an 80 mile an hour zone, and it just couldn't do it. So he pulled me over thinking that maybe I was tired, but it really wasn't. It was just the engine trying to hold the speed. And that was the inception of the LSJK. So we'll see you soon.